So I'm very, very keen on talking about poop, mood, and food with all my clients and all the work I do. And it's always balancing between the flesh, the body, this vehicle, if you want to call it, that is having this experience in this moment. And it's not just the spirit having a human experience, but it's the microbes having the human experience. It's the fascia that's having the human experience. It's the water that who we are is the water that's having the human experience. That's where I'm interested in.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood Taoist master son Qing. It's Christmas Day again, and the universe has heard my very calling, bringing another incredible being into what would seem this sort of seamless, conscious exploration that I'm on, helping others find this very essence, this note, this signature, this resonance. And our guest today is no exception, is an incredible example of embodying that and helping people understand the greater nature of who they really are. Masami, the health intuitive, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, so have I. It's, all the things that you promote and all the things that you help others with are very much in line with my appreciation and a deeper understanding of how to really help people acquire whatever it is that they find dysfunctional and realigning them with the mastery that you've acquired over your lifetime. And without any further ado, how about you just give people a little backstory on how we got here today?
How we got here, or
how you got here? How you got here? This is not
because I was thinking, there's this Nova event that is happening this year that already happened 3,000 years ago that we get to witness. This one giant star is like chipping away itself, and it's landing on this smaller star. Have you heard of this? That we get to actually witness this light show in the darkness of the sky this year, and all of us can see it because it's going to last for several days. But the funny part is that it's not linear, right? It's not happening now. It already happened 3,000 years ago. So what an amazing thing. So how do we get here? It's a mystery, isn't it? And I love being in the place of not knowing. That not knowing feeds me so much to be curious, remain curious on this earth. So that's a nutshell in how we got here. And how I got here is too long of a story, but I'll just tell you this. I was working on my memoir several years ago, and this was after my hometown got struck by two major earthquakes. That was 7.4 and destroyed my hometown's infrastructures, but also this glorious castle that they had been working on fixing this castle for a long time. I mean, very, very long time. And this castle's been there for about close to 500 years. And they have these gorgeous rock walls, handmade, obviously. And I saw that wall crumble after years and years, decades and decades of people fixing this. And they had to hire masters. I mean, these are we're talking Japanese masters of putting walls back together, carving, carpenters. I mean, these are like skilled people that have centuries before them that have taught their sons or daughters, and then they've been going forward and forward. So these are the masters, right? They're fixing these castles again. And this one guy was on the news, and I had tears coming down because I'm witnessing this castle crumbling in parts. And at the same time, my father was in a coma because of the earthquakes, and then our family home was crumbling at the same time also. And then this man just stood, and the microphone onto him. It's like, oh my gosh, you were you've been fixing these walls and making it perfect. And we just had the grand opening about 2 years ago. And you were a part of that team last time. And now you got to be on this team this time. And how do you feel? And, he just basically said, well, I just teach the skills to the next generation. And the next generation is going to take on this role again. And we will just rebuild it back up one stone at a time, one rock at a time, and one pillar at a time. And I'm thinking to myself, and he did not even shed tears. It was just like, this is just a matter of life, And so how did I get here is just the combination of putting my rock stones one rock at a time, and at times falls apart, and at times I crumble down with it. But then I pick myself back up and say, but yet today comes. It's the now that I just show up to over and over and over. So, early before we started, you asked me, so how would you like me to introduce you? Like, how would you like to be known in this community? And then I said, well, you have to kind of come up with your labels so they know what the heck they're listening to, who the heck is this person? But at the same time, I have issues with labels. And because I grew up in Japan, my father was the only white man in a city of 1 million people, and my mom's Japanese. And since my dad has passed after that earthquakes, but I was labeled a lot growing up, right? Because when you and your 2 other siblings are the only mixed kids in the city, they have a lot of names for you. From mutts to you're half this to you're, mixed blood of not so good. And so a lot of derogatory terms. So I grew up really knowing that I'm going to continue to expand and continue to not get caught up in my labeling. And so, I don't know how that's exactly tied to this castle thing that popped in my mind to start this conversation, but we have all these different pieces, and sometimes you put this rock before this other one, and then you try it out. You try different sizes, try different ways of putting yourself, but I expect all that to crumble too at some point. And honestly, I'm okay with all that. So I will stop there for a moment.
Well, it's an interesting way to realize how we have a very common understanding about how powerful the present moment really is. And to acquire that, I always remind people whenever I teach someone that very resonance, there is no place, person, or thing, first, third, and no person, is how you acquire that state. And that's really the only tangible consistency, which is the present moment. That I find that really powerful, what you just brought the audience's attention to. And furthermore, that brings us to your as I formed an identity, just for all intents and purposes, the podcast, but we mentioned health intuitive. Now, you also were very clear that you're not looking to do a specific healing or diagnosis. It's just an awareness, or how would you perceive that as?
Yeah, so I'm not a doctor, so technically I cannot diagnose anything, right? However, I look at the symptoms. So symptoms and signs and symptoms that your body expresses, those are all basically different kinds of languages that this body speaks. And so my ultimate goal in life is to be a translator, a really good translator of my own body's language. And my goal is to teach others how to translate your own whispers and sometimes screams and sometimes, banging at the door that the body is trying to convey. And that doesn't need to always be translated through diagnosis. So I decided to call myself the health intuitive instead of medical intuitive. And I have a background in functional nutritional therapy. And I also have a background as I have a master's degree in international business and MBA. So I try to balance the left and right brain. So when I'm working with clients, it's about getting to know the symptoms and the signs. So my intake form is very long, like 15 pages long. You're expected to spend at least an hour and a half filling out a lot of these things and over 300 questions on your symptoms and signs, meaning get to know yourself. The whole point of doing this work is to become the expert of you. So I'm not going to become an expert of you. You have to become the expert of you yourself, but I will guide you in some ways from my knowledge and my scientific knowledge background as well, biology and physiology that I've been learning for so long. I will guide you to getting to know what you can do, what tools you can use to navigate life as this flesh. And I do not abandon this body. In fact, that's why I work with spiritually oriented people, because my job is to bring them back to this body, to have them come home to this body, because I truly believe that all sickness is homesickness. And we're homesick for this physical body. And so embodied, non-embodied spirituality is not a spirituality to me. That's just bypassing. So I'm very, very keen on talking about poop, mood, and food with all my clients and all the work I do. And it's always balancing between the flesh, the body, this vehicle, if you want to call it, that is having this experience in this moment. And it's not just the spirit having a human experience, but it's the microbes having the human experience. It's the fascia that's having the human experience. It's the water that who we are is the water that's having the human experience. That's where I'm interested in. So I am not sure what I answered and what I'm talking about in terms of what you asked me. But yeah, let's take a pause.
Yeah, so I mean, this brings me to more ancient sort of Taoist practices, Eastern philosophy, Eastern, Taoist metaphysics sort of stuff, macro, micro. So, more commonly, if you're walking down the street, you want a foot massage, reflexology. You're looking at the whole universe that you can reflect on the palm of your hand. Within Taoism, we do face reading, hands, feet. You can basically create an understanding of the ecosystem from these very powerful instruments that reveal it all. So I'm assuming that you're looking at that level in your own practices, but for within Taoism, which would be fundamentally traditional Chinese medicine, it all started from the internal alchemy of the Yellow Emperor thousands of years ago. That's how it was realized. And so, energetics is still the most powerful pillar within Chinese medicine. And when you understand how to really utilize it, it is the most potent, in my opinion, tool. And then when you amplify everything is energy, frequency, vibration, that would then contribute to exactly what you're speaking of, which is the food, the mood. All these things are all different forms of energy. So energy has a vibration, has a frequency, and then are you obtaining the resonance? And that's where you require, a miracle or a regulation or a harmony, as you would say, through the food, through the lifestyle, through the mindset that then transmutes. And I agree with you. Within Taoism, we always saturate the physicality. We come in with the constitution, we call it the Qing, the essence of who you are. And most people come in, I've never seen anyone at 100% due to their hereditary gene expression or genetic code. They're normally about 80% of their battery life. And then with the practices that we teach, we bring it up to 100, and then you go from 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to whatever. And then you start to understand that you don't ever have to use your own life force to acquire the very insight within a spiritual path from an energetic perspective, which is all things. And so you always stay full. And so I really appreciate the understanding of the food, because the ultimate within a Taoist is one meal every second day. And then
Right.
people feel superhuman. They're bulletproof. They can walk through walls. They're like, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why is that going on? And I feel like I've had 10 cups of coffee and I could walk through a wall, because you're refining your ecosystem. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I love that you brought up. Let's say, let's back up about the one meal every other day kind of a living, right? So I would say I'm pretty close to that way of living. And I'm going to bring it down to maybe a little bit more tangible level. So you
Mhm.
can kind of almost grab it, taste it. I'm very interested in five senses. A lot of people are very interested in the sixth sense and up, and they're very much interested in the chakras that's above your head and below the feet. And I'm very much interested in the seven chakras. And, I'm Ayurvedically trained as well. So, doshas are meaning a lot to me as well. What kind of jin or the dosha that you came into this world with? What did you come in already gifted? And what are you going to do with that gift? Right? Are you going to just use it up and then be done with it? Or can you exponentially grow that? And you can, right? So when it comes to, let's say, when somebody hears, oh, there's energy, I can get to the point of like just one meal or per day even, or one meal every other day, and then I can have all these energy. And so they want to jump into that. But I do believe that there are some steps that we really need to be taking.
Mhm.
So if a client comes in and says, I want to get to that point that you two are talking about, and how do I get there? Then I have to first look at their food journal. I have to find out what the heck they're eating and look at their metabolic rates. So metabolic energy is very, very important. And so if this person says to me, I'm eating and snacking all day long, I'm a grazer, let's say, right? And what's sad is that I just read an article from New York Times, or maybe it was a Wall Street Journal actually, that talked about the glucose monitoring that the people are using. And what they're saying is that grazing throughout the day is a better way to monitor, because then your blood sugar will even out. Well, of course, it's going to be like pretty much all the time up or stable, because you're stabilizing your blood sugar per se, right? But you will not experience the ebb and flow of your life and if you live this way. So number one, if somebody comes in and says, I want to do what you're talking about, then I will say, well, you're currently so-called the sugar burning body. So sugar burning body means you have to have that quick something. Give me some carbs, give me some sugar, give me something to fuel my energy. So you're relying heavily on the sugar burning kind of a thing. So in order to go from a sugar burning body to something that lasts longer, we call it the fat burning body in a more of a nutritional side, right? To bridge that, there's a huge bridge that you have to walk across, and it's going to take some time. So the sugar burners tend to be on more of a survival mode. They are quick to anger. They're not very stable in terms of energetic fields, but also emotionally. They're up and down quite a bit. They're on the roller coaster all day long. So they miss out on this kind of a nice ebb and flow. They miss out on the small ripples of things. They notice the tsunamis of the world. And so a little bit of news or a little bit of something that happens to them on the way back from home at work, and they're caught in the traffic and they are all worked up, road rage and all these things, because that's what they're living on, these big, big, big waves. So in order to go from there to here, we need to start tweaking that kind of a lifestyle. Eat, snack all day long. Grazing is one of the worst things you can do. And then behaviors that they tend to have is that they're always looking for quick fixes. So their spiritual practices are very quick fixes as well. Give me something I can do right this moment. And can you give me some miraculous things? Can you heal me today? Like that kind of a request. That is a red flag to me, because that is not what I do. Maybe there are other teachers that do that. They, guarantee spontaneous healing, and they'll spontaneous this and that. But no, I'm interested in a lasting healing. The lasting healing is a lifestyle changes. That's a long-term journey. That is a journey that you're going to take for the rest of this life and possibly the next life. And you've been taking that journey for the past lives as well. So it's a long stretch of things. So number one, physiologically and biologically, you may have a different opinions on this, because you might be thinking, no, we can get to there tomorrow. But I have never witnessed that in my work of 25 years of working with people. That takes at least, and it's not even that long, 3 months, 90 days for you to begin to change the way you are doing things, to the point where you are no longer needing that quick sugar and carbohydrates, or needing that quick spike of excitement. They're looking for excitement, right? To stabilizing and noticing the subtlety of life. It takes about 3 months, and it's quite a bit of a work. And it's not something that you could just do one day and then you have a cheat day on the weekends and you could do whatever you want, order pizzas and, carbohydrates, all you want, and then you get back into it on Monday. It doesn't work like that. It's a very much 3 months every day. You must slowly change the way you are consuming foods. Then you can get to the point where food no longer becomes such a big part of your life. So you have a lot more energy outside of digestion, because digestion takes up about 70% of your current energy. And a digestion can take upwards of 4 hours or longer. So for 4 hours, every time you eat, you're putting everything aside, and the body's going to focus on digesting foods. So you don't get to metabolize your traumas. You don't get to digest your information you just picked up. You don't get to process and absorb other things that are here for us to experience, because you're focused on digesting the food. That is the lowest level, I would say. The grazing kind of life is the lowest level of the chi. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Amen. Yay. I agree 1,000,000%. I mean, more commonly within today's society, we call this, it's fashionably called a metabolic disorder, reflectant on insulin resistance created by the food choices that you make. And then it sort of transcribes into however you want to dictate what that is. And it's reflected on your mental, emotional state, your physical state. And so nurturing the microbiome of the gut and making it realize that you're going to be able to be more efficient. Most people notion the idea that, your immune system is generally variably, 80, 90% of all of it comes from the gut itself. And understanding that, and that can be splitting hairs depending upon who you're talking to, a nutritionist, a neuroscientist, physicist, genius, health person, doctor, whatever you want to call it. I mean, what we're speaking on is, experiential results from choices that you make. And so the ebb and flow that we're speaking of, and with that comes the sort of side effect of like the heart rate variable that comes with decisions that you make. So, for the audience, in a nutshell, you take a cycle of energy that would more commonly be ATP, glucose, glycogen, boom, you're there. We are now sort of splitting it and transferring it into what they call ketosis, or more commonly something where you're utilizing fat as a form of energy, as opposed to the short, fast response of, glycogen, which is basically generated by different substrates of sugar, complex carbohydrates, however you want to put it. And with that, you create an irregular sort of like energy, as you just said. It's not the same. And when you regulate that and you make your body efficient, so you're insulin sensitive, all of a sudden you put out less to digest and to consume that. Because all BS aside, meat is insulinogenic. There's no question about it. Everything has to, because that's the secret sauce that we use to formulate that and transfer it into some form of energy. So regulating that blood sugar level, the reference of that, it can come in all forms. And so energy is translated, and I just love the way you say that, because you referred to functional nutrition. I have a lot of different students, from medical doctors, doctors of Chinese medicine, chiropractors, functional medicine doctors, you name it. They all end up back at the energy because they're very perplexed with the deficiency of results. They get into their field to help people,
Right.
and they're like, I'm still not helping people, and they always end back with the classic, most potent one, which is that realization. And that comes in all forms when what you're speaking of, because you're taking it at a much deeper level, and that transmutation of the food acquires an abundance of energy when you move these pieces together and regulate them. And so, would you be a proponent of some of the things you do? Would you subscribe to and promote the idea of physical exercise on top of their eating behaviors, or is that something that's not really?
You have to. I mean, movements create changes in your life, right? So sedentary life is really impacting so many of us these days. And, I work with a lot of women now. I used to work with only men, actually. And then now I work with almost all women. And because I'm in menopause and postmenopause now, that I work with a lot of women who are needing to change the way they've been living, and the hormones are dropping, and there are many, many fluctuations that they're going through. So this is when the movements become very important. In terms of science, when you are sedentary for more than about 45 minutes to an hour at a time, your sex hormones really get dysregulated. And especially for women, estrogen, we can become, in a sense, estrogen dominant. And the xenoestrogen can actually kind of build up in your system when you don't move. So the movements are very important. Depends on what kind of, movements as well. And then this is where my love for the moon, as you can see from my background, right? I have a lot of moon emphasis in the background, but the moon cycles become very, very important for women as well. And I suppose for men too, but men are less sensitive to the moon rhythms and the moon gravitational forces. Women, on the other hand, probably because of our percentage of the fats that we carry, as well as the composition of probably how we hold fluids in our bodies as well. It's a little bit different than the men. So we do respond to the gravitational forces with the moon a little more strongly and sensitively. So as you go through the menopause, perimenopause too, but menopause and postmenopause, the movement cycles that, what kind of exercise, let's just call it the exercise or the movements. Things like Tai Chi and Qigong, and even doing like restorative yoga, yin yoga. And I'm a yoga therapist as well. So using that kind of practices can be very, very helpful after about 3 to 5, I would say maybe about 3 to 4 days after the full moon, till going through the dark moon and leading up to the new moon period. So that the last 2 weeks or so of the moon cycles, this is when it's really important to emphasize that type of more of a yin style movement, more of a restorative style, more of something that grounds you and restores the autonomic nervous system towards the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest and repair kind of a side. And then, so, a lot of people will vilify the sympathetic side of the nervous system, which is more of a cortisol and movements and excitatory. Maybe people will connect that with fight and flight, but that's also important. If you didn't have the nervous system working well, you won't be able to get out of bed in the morning, right? So that's the emphasis that comes in for me when I look at more, but not just the day-to-day 24-hour cycles of a circadian rhythm, but when I'm looking at circa lunar cycles and circa more of a tidal rhythms. So it's the ocean waves, it's the movements, the fluid movements. It's the right after the new moon, about maybe 2-3 days after the new moon, that slight sliver of the light starts to get added to the moon surface. That's a great time to reintroduce yourself to maybe more of a high intensity exercises or using more weights. So something that will get your muscles to start building back up again. And I mean, this is more for women. Men can follow this kind of rhythm as well, but especially for women to work on your muscles and your strengths. And so you can use your own body weight in doing push-ups, you can do planks, you can do many ways to use your own already given tools here. I'm not a huge fan of using extra tools, machines and this and that. Not a huge fan. You could do it, but if you do want to use some of those things to strengthen your muscles, that's a great time leading up to the full moon. And I generally have people take a little bit of break, but 2 days before the full moon and at least 2-3 days after the full moon, and give that pretty intense period of the moon cycles a break so that you can recalibrate and start over in this cycle. So movements, to answer your question about movements, extremely important, because stagnation, I mean, basically lack of movements and the stagnation causes all illnesses, and but also causes your energy to get stuck. Energy cannot flow through a very stagnant and dammed up surfaces, whether that's a lymphatic system, that's whether it's your colon that is constipated, whether that's your lymphatic system in your brain that is not flowing. That causes tremendous amount of diseases and illnesses, but also that's going to show up in your energetic fields of your life. So relationship can get stagnant, your finance can get stagnant, your abilities to speak out and speak of your own essence and your energy can get stagnant and dammed up. So, for me, the body, mind, spirit shall never be separated. And we've done such a disservice to this world for so long, since really the Newtonian time, that we have separated ourselves into these pieces. That one, priests will only talk about the spirit, and the college professors will talk about the minds, or you go to neurologists and they'll talk about the mind. And then you go to see a specialist for just to have the specialist look at your, gut and in your GI tracts. And they're never looking at what's on your plate, or, how are you sitting down to eat? What is your autonomic nervous system at the moment of you consuming that food? We're not looking at the holistic picture, right? So, but we are starting to shift the needles. I think we are slowly creating the tipping point enough that some of us are waking up, because so many of us been walking around asleep.
Yeah, I'd have to agree wholeheartedly. The physicality is a dismissal, but understanding, I spent many, many years working with the endocrine system of women. So I will take anyone from zero to a hero in 10 weeks, give someone who's had twins, because the mastery of the female endocrine system is the mastery of all things. And so when you understand how that works and you're able to help people acquire their own mastery, I'll take a woman who's had twins, and in 6 weeks she'll have a six-pack and a body fat level that would seem obscene. But, this is an understanding of the cycle of things. And it brings you right back to, so within the simplicity of what we speak of, we're talking about the emotional content that then draws from your hormonal system. So there's a homeostasis that's created within the physiology, whether you're exercising. So if you exercise, fundamentally, I would say putting more stress on yourself over a 20-minute period creates a homeostasis irregularity due to raising cortisol. So anything in excess of that, fundamentally from physiology, would be potentially negative depending on what else you're doing. But let's just say you started there and then you move to understanding that, okay, I exercised, I did some Tai Chi, that's great. I did some spiritual stuff. And then I got into a fight with my girlfriend at Starbucks because she didn't buy me my latte. And then all of a sudden, your body will go, well, okay, well, you've required these type of sources of energy, the DHEA off sprouts of as testosterone and estrogen, and then it sort of continually goes down, and so it will continue to produce cortisol until further notice. And when it cannot produce any more cortisol, it will start taking from the very fundamentals of the structure of your hormonal system. So estrogen and testosterone will start being tapped into, and it will just keep cannibalizing upon itself if you don't create the infrastructure that we speak of. So from a food perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, and then ultimately, if you regulate that, you will be humming like nobody's business. But this is why what you're teaching people is so powerful. This is stuff that's sort of like very simplistic within Taoism, but most people don't understand that because we have this need for what we call the internal immortal body that we create. So we nurture the physical body for as long within this incarnation, so we can stretch it out to acquire consciousness by saturating the cell with this divine energy, and then making better decisions that help the machine work efficiently. Right. And so, all the things that you're saying is just so like Taoist. It's frightening. But, a lot of people dismiss it. They go straight to the internal alchemy. I want the magic. I want Harry Potter. I want all these things. But there's different layers. And, the charge that you and I are receiving right now, where we're embodying that amplitude of energy, is exactly what I'm speaking of. And so when you talk about all these things, you get me very excited, because this is fundamentally how I've approached all things. Less is more, but there's a degree of an approach. You're not going out and doing a 4-hour marathon and you're exercising for 8 days and you're eating a meal every hour and a half. This is a recipe for destruction. Mm-hmm. When you utilize it and you become efficient, everything has its place. So aligning the connective tissue, aligning the skeletal muscle, having the framework of your bone structure, making sure that those energy centers that we speak of, the 7, are being addressed and being amplified and synchronized, so that you can get the most powerful result from your exploration. It's funny because I went from Taoism when I first started as a child. As a 11-year-old boy, I became obsessed with bodybuilding and powerlifting. So I spent all my teenage years acquiring a very deep insight into competitive bodybuilding, powerlifting. And then at the age of 20, a voice in my head said, "You must look inside." I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I pick things up, I crush them, I throw them. That's what I do. And there's abundance of it. And even then, I'll tell you this is 11. This is back in the 80s. I was eating 1 meal a day back then, intuitively.
Yeah.
And I took a small variable of amino acid blends that were the 8 essential amino acids you can't derive from what people perceive as just plant-based. You cannot produce them yourself, so you have to acquire them externally. And I was eating 1 meal back then, and my squat went up to 500 pounds. I was deadlifting, just stupid weight. And people are like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, you're taking something else, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's called utilizing my energy." I was literally eating vegetables and some protein, maybe chicken, fish, beef, and I had more energy, more power, more ability than ever before. And that was back in the 80s, where, an MCT was an interesting energy source. It can be variable now, and people use that medium chain triglyceride as a form of energy, but you can do it in other ways. What are your thoughts on all that? Oh, man.
Well, like you, I stopped eating late I started doing that around 18 years old as well, that I stopped eating dinner, basically. And I did that for a long, long time. And people always ask, it's like, because I have a pretty decent appetite when I do eat, and they're surprised at how much I can eat, right, when I need to eat.
Right.
But it varies, from day to day. There are days that I just want to eat nothing but broccoli all day. Not all day, but just one meal, And then the next day I might eat a huge steak. But basically, I stopped eating late at night. And that was not only intuitive, but it's something that said to me inside me, what, you're going to run a marathon at 8 p.m.? No, you're not. You need to digest this, and this is the time of elimination. This is the time of detox. This is the time that your body is in a cleanup crew, just like office buildings, right? After all the office workers go home 5 or 6 p.m., who goes in to clean it? They're the cleaning crews that are going to go in there and clean it. That's what's happening inside you. So that has helped me so much. So I've been doing that kind of a eating habit since I was 18. And so always people ask me, so what is your secret in staying fit and thin? It's like, well, just don't eat a lot at night. Just be done with it, because the sun went down. That means it's not the time for you to be digesting. And that's when you don't produce enough Agni. Agni is an Ayurvedic word for fire, internal fire. We stop producing a lot of Agni in your third chakra. So that's not the time to be fueling yourself with more food that's going to just dampen your fire. As you need your own internal fire. When that gets dampened, that's when you don't have the energy to keep going, and energy to keep learning, and energy to expand who you are and tap into the levels that you tap into. We can't do that if you're just continuously bombarding yourself with packaged foods and dead foods. So that's one, right? And another thing about, one thing that I didn't quite answer, and then I'll come back to that a little bit, about why I call myself the health intuitive is, first of all, like I said, I'm not interested in the medical diagnosis, but I'm interested in the whole picture of who you are. And I have always been intuitive. So it's not something that I had to really work at. Everybody comes into this world intuitive. I know that to be a fact. But it's a muscle that you have to keep working on it. But I was forced into working on my intuition because I looked so differently from everybody else that I grew up with. And when you stick out like a sore thumb, there's a saying in Japanese, if the nail sticks out, you hammer that down. But I'm the nail that never got hammered down. So basically, I just had to find ways to navigate the world. So my senses really heightened. So I have an incredible abilities to see things, feel things, hear things, and read people, because I did that from the moment I came into this world with, my abilities to sense others. So I've been sensing others my entire life. And I know most people didn't have this kind of a schooling that I did, which is as long, I'm 52. So over 5 decades of that schooling of honing my intuition. So, but where I differ perhaps from other intuitive people who call themselves medical intuitive, or they're in that kind of a realm, is that my work is about honing into you and giving you like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 tools. That's about it, that you can begin to do that will make the most difference in your health and your overall being. So instead of throwing everything but the kitchen sink at you, where I shine as my work and where I'm so good at, and I can honestly say that, like, I've not met other people that are able to do this level of honing, is that I can listen to what's going on with you, and you'll come with 5 pages of diagnosis and all this is that's going on with you. And I will look at that and I can tune in and say, this and this and that are what we're going to work on. So I'll give you an example of this man that I started working with only about 3 weeks ago. And then he emailed me this long testimonial just about less than a week after he started working with me. And I honed in on 3 things. And I do recommend supplements. So I did give him a couple of supplements recommendations, but I really focus in on what it is that he needs today, because we can always add or subtract later on. But the beginning stage is very important. And he emailed me, he said, I cannot believe how flexible I am, because he came to see me with his heart conditions, his lower back, his SI joints were really frozen. And I do this over the Zoom. So, I'm taking the energy medicine to the next level at this point. This is the quantum biology. This is an energy medicine. This is a quantum field that I'm tapped into, right? So early on, you kind of talked about that too, that I'm in the field with you. I am you. There's no difference. So I tested supplements on behalf of him by using my own body. So I would taste certain supplements and I have him move. Like I will have him do forward bends, or I'll have him turn side to side to see how his hip flexors are doing, how his adrenals are doing, how his different ligaments that tug at him. One leg could be a little bit shorter or the other. That's very common. So anyway, he gets back to me and then he's saying, this is incredible. I've already toned up. My muscles are back up. He's 72 years old. He said he was just deteriorating, flabby, just not having muscle tones. He's like, I'm not even doing anything. And I got muscle tones back. He's sleeping great. He's digesting wonderfully. It just, all these things can change so dramatically when you can focus in on it. But also another side of it is that he fully trusted me. Because one of the questions that I ask every single client that comes through my door, my Zoom door, is that, are you willing to change based on what I recommend? And if they don't answer yes to that question, I do not work with that person because there's no alignment between that person and myself, right? So he said yes, and then we worked on it. And then just about a week ago, he emailed me again and he said, guess what? I've been going to my chiropractor for 10 years. And he always measured my inflammation down the spine from up to down, just looking at what's going on. And this chiropractor was totally surprised because he said that his inflammation went down so much that it's the lowest inflammation that it can be detected, basically. And what's funny is that I said thank you to that email. And then I said, well, did you let your chiropractor what you've been doing? Like how you've changed your diet and some of the things that they recommended to you doing? And he said, oh, I didn't. And the funny thing is that most doctors don't even care. Most doctors don't even ask. They're surprised, they're intrigued, but that's where it ends.
Mhm.
And this what brings back to possibly, and this is a question for you that I have for you, is that the importance of the curiosity. When you become less curious, to me, that is the biggest sign of aging. That is the biggest sign of you deteriorating. When you stop wondering about things, I wonder, and will you tell me, like, I'm curious about that? Because when we are curious, what also happens physiologically and neurologically is that our amygdalas can actually begin to quiet down. And the limbic part of the brain generally goes into fiery mode. I mean, it just like burns in there because we are always like fight or flight. We're running away from things. We are always nervous. Cortisol is up most of the time for most people. That's why we can't produce melatonin. We can't sleep. And then we repeat this cycle over and over. But the not maybe the only solution, but one of the main solutions to quieting down that part of the brain and to calm that fire, the internal inflammation, is curiosity. It's to be just want to know, what is it that the you do? What is it that the you are doing to look so energetically expansive and strong and capable and powerful? What is it that you do? That's something that is very much lacking, I would say, in where I live, which is United States, especially in the medical field in the United States. So I'm curious what you think of that curious question.
There's several different things paths that you go on. I agree in miraculous healing. I agree in when you align with things and you understand how this sort of energetic stuff is really just energy, frequency, vibration. There's sort of, for me, when people come to me, it's like, I want to learn internal, alchemy, martial arts. I want Tai Chi, Bagua, Kung Fu. I'm like, oh, cool. I can teach you all that stuff. But if you don't have the infrastructure, the energetic architecture means nothing. It's just like it's just a bunch of fancy poses, and you can align the connective tissue as much as you want. You're not going to acquire the true essence of your energy factory and having it moving and functioning the way it should, as everyone has it. So curiosity, I think, it has the potential for being a really powerful solution, and doing exactly as you said, evoking this sort of like calming of the mind. Yet it's also a place where I find a lot of people, they call them information seekers.
Right.
And they just continue to consume information, and they put it in the category of curiosity, and they're forever perplexed because they never get a handle on anything. And so I get that quite often as the very, basically the core of all the people that come to me are, I've got all this information, and Jade Emperor is very clear. When you accept you know nothing, you know everything. And so that really brings you
I agree with you there. And I actually call that I distinguish between seeking and curiosity. So I call that the seekers, I don't know, demise.
affliction.
Yeah. I like for seekers to become finders. And, so there's so many seekers out there. And a lot of times seekers don't have the endurance or the stamina to just stick with it, to trust this path, trust what I'm saying, and stick with what I'm asking you to do right now. So there are these 3 categories of things that in Japan is very important. And then it's taught through the Taoist philosophy as well. It's called Shu Ha Di, and it might be pronounced differently in Chinese, obviously, but we use the same characters in Japan, right? Shu means to protect or to honor. And what you're protecting and honoring is that you're honoring what your teacher is teaching you. And it's very important that we actually listen to the people that have been on this road. That doesn't mean that the teacher knows everything. Absolutely not. I wake up every morning going, oh my God, what am I going to learn today? What am I going to discard, and what am I going to learn new? It's like they're constantly happening, renewal that's happening for me. Every day there's something that I go into aha moments with. Okay. But that being said, when you first are a seeker and come to me to find some solutions or answers, I require that person to stay in the chute little bit. It might be 3 months. It might be, for some people, take 3 years. We don't know, but just like any kind of, if you want to become like a sushi chef, let's say in Japan, and you want to do apprenticeship, well, the apprenticeship can last 10 years and you are in the chute. This is when you're honoring and protecting the knowledge and information that's been bestowed to you, that things are given to you, gifted to you, or you're picking up on, and you practice that. And I'm not saying you need to do that for 10 years when you work with me. No, absolutely not. But let's say I need you to be focused on what I'm telling you to do, because I have intuitively distilled that information for you, and I have given that to you. That's why you came to an intuitive health practitioner, not a medical practitioner. So I need that connection, right? And once you make that connection, and we always know, like, I just know when to encourage them. I always know intuitively when I start to say it to the second stage, which is called ha. Ha means to break free of things. So this is when you begin to tweak things a little bit. This is when I teach you how to become intuitive within yourself, so you can muscle test yourself with the supplements, the foods, the information you're taking in, maybe the courses that, I get questions like, should I take this health course? And then, I will, in the beginning, will help them to sort it out. But eventually I get to the point where I want you to break free of relying on me. And you got to start to practice your own intuitive inner knowing space. So they start to practice and practice. That's the, you're starting to break from just what I say. And I love seeing that as a practitioner, as a teacher, as somebody that is also a student. Being the best teacher is to be a student. So I'm a student of what this student is starting to break free of. And I learned a lot from that. And then you get to the third stage, which is Li. Li is to kind of a separate or to depart or to remove, basically. So the Li means for you to graduate from working with me, to graduate and expand your interest and knowing. And sometimes the Li can be maybe 6 months that you go into your own journey for a while, and you might, it's just the circular things, right? It's just like the nova thing that's happening in the sky. It's like it happened 3,000 years ago. There's a comeback around again. We get to witness that again. So maybe the person that has left and doing his or her own things may come back around and ask me for the next level of the intuition, and we come back to that 3 stages again. We might repeat that over and over, but I love seeing that flow, that movement. And that's where you go from the seeker first, and you might be curious first, but then so many people are addicted to the seeking. This is a form of addiction because it can continue to fuel your dopamine. It can continue to get you to be excited. I mean, it's like a caffeine, caffeine, sugar, you name it, alcohol, whatever, drugs. Seeking is also a form of drugs for many, many people. So this is where teachers like us, we guide them into the point, okay, you sought out a lot of things, 10,000 different courses you've signed up. But let's focus in on this 3 things, these 3 breaths, maybe this movement only. And you do that over and over and over till it becomes a part of your cellular expressions. Then at that point, it'll come a point when I'm humbled enough to know when to start to encourage the student to start breaking, experimenting, looking for things that it's within themselves, not looking for things outside of them, but start to experiment within themselves, explore, so that's a shu hari. And so I agree with you. When people come to me, they've been to 15 doctors. They've taken every course out there. They've listened to every health summits out there, from SIBO summits to gut summits to gut brain summits to adrenal fatigue summits to hormone balance summits. They've purchased it all. And now my job is to see it in all that messiness, to pinpoint a couple of things. But then I don't take on the role of carrying them through their entire life either, because that is too much pressure on me. And this is why I don't call myself a healer, because I have no interest in healing anyone, because I'm only interested in witnessing you heal your own self. So that's why, that's how I organize my work into 3 stages. But what I rely on the most is my abilities to see clearly what it is that this person needs in this moment. And I think I owe a lot to not just my upbringings, and where I grew up, but also my name. My name, Masami, means truth. It's Shinjitsu in Japanese. And truth is what I'm after. And the truth will be different from person to person. There's a capital T truth as well as little t truths that can change. And as a teacher, I need to continuously work on being flexible. And so it's flexible in my hamstrings, it's flexible in my core, and it's flexible in my mind, and staying flexible with the energetic shifts that we're all experiencing, because we are experiencing a tremendous amount of shifts right now. And, a lot of yuck and muck are starting to come out because we are going through Herxheimer reactions of the society on the global scale. Yeah. So, but I will pause there.
Yeah. Now, all the OGs, any of my students, they understand that you're notioning and signaling what we commonly call ideomotor response. So divination, transmission, and that's more related to if you're a psychologist, a hypnotherapist, or someone of that nature, muscle testing, dowsing, pendulums, tarot cards, Ouija boards. However, there is a fundamental transmission that takes place from something from a higher consciousness, a higher intelligence that gives you this very understanding. Now, from a Taoist perspective, we go full force into the feng shui. And so the environment that you're also,
Right.
occupying is critical. And so I teach people energetic dowsing so they can find the lines under the earth that are the highest resonation, and then lines that are more lower vibrational, which might be representative of a water line crossing the very space that you live in, will transmute into a physical element due to the nature of that element of water drawing the energy from the physical body. So, you have to address these things appropriately. And I imagine that you perhaps are looking at those types of things also within their environment to suggest that, we have a specific, what we call the architecture of healing. It's called the Taoist rites. And it's a 2-day program. I teach people, and there's 81 colors, 81 frequencies, and 81 incantations that can literally address anything and everything that you bring up. And the second you apply the frequency and the color, it's a miraculous healing. It's crazy. It's what's going on here, but that's what everything is. And I really find it so powerful what you're saying, because this ideomotor stuff, sometimes for fun, and I take my kids, down to, I'm from Nevada, so I'm down at the Strip. I'll go down to the Strip, and we'll play, hey, find a group of people that are all bubbly and excited. Do you want to experience relaxation instantaneously? Yeah. And then we go into different states of trance or consciousness and show them things that they couldn't potentially think is possible, and leave them with a transformational emotional, mental, or physical healing, because it happens like this. And they're like, wow, thank you so much. But moreover, the ideomotor I find really interesting, because most people, as you refer to it, muscle testing. So you're testing the resistance within your own physical body that's replicating their physical body, being able to attune to what is most potent. So you're speaking on things that are highly advanced on a consciousness level, that you're attuning into their auric field, their energetic potential, and then applying it real time. And so this is something that I teach, and it's something that's really powerful when it comes to acquiring that information, because that's how you do it. And so I would go ahead.
Well, so let's go into the muscle testing a little bit. So a lot of people come to me already have learned some ways to muscle test. But here's the problem with the muscle test. And that's why I don't teach people muscle testing immediately or revisit muscle testing. Because some of them will say, oh, I know how to muscle test. I use this and that, or I've done da 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 da, or I've taken the weekend course on that, or
well, if it's distorted from the beginning, you're not getting the accurate information. So you have to regulate. I know
you got it. You got it. So you know exactly where I'm going with it. You just, time warped with me. We're in the quantum field together. So you get it, right? Is that the reason why I don't jump into the muscle testing right away, and I'm choosing to muscle test it on behalf of their bodies at the beginning, is because most of them are so clogged up inside them that their axes are, like the vertical axis, are just not quite there, or they're so noisy. I call it the horizontal axis versus the vertical axis, but they're not here yet. And it could be truly things like they're so constipated, they're so lymphatically not draining. They could be having hormonal dysregulations, they could be having blood sugar dysregulations, they could be having metabolic issues. So I don't trust when they say to me, oh, I muscle tested and this was fine, and I'm muscle testing it while she or he is talking to me, and I'm getting a complete no. I'm like visceral reactions from what they're saying. Then and I say, let's hold on a sec. And then I have them test it in many variety of things. So they've been testing it in a certain way using pendulum or maybe even their bodies or whatever, I will introduce a totally different ways so that I can demonstrate it to them that what they got yes on isn't yes right now. It's what they wish to be. So most of the time people are muscle testing based on what they want, what they think they need, what they desire from the mind center and not from the gut center. They're not testing at the dantian, they're not testing at the lower level of knowing space. That is extremely important. That's what grounds you, and it's not up and out. So I'm all about down and in. I'm about not waking up. I'm up about waking, not wake up, but wake down. I'm interested in more waking down. I'm interested in more of the darkness. I'm more interested in the soul journey. And I actually do separate the spirit and soul a little bit. So the spirit is something that is always wanting to ascend and connect back to the heavenly energy. And the soul needs this messiness of this earthly matter and this crazy experiences we get to have on this body, this through the body. That's when the soul gets animated. So I'm interested in speaking to the soul because spirit's always going to be like, come on home, get out of that body. You're not your body. All your spiritual teachers have taught you, you're not your body. But I'm not interested in that message because ultimately we could get there. We'll all get there. But I'm interested in the soul expression. And that means this physiology is the one that's housing the soul. And the soul is also housing the body. So there's this beautiful relationship that we need to cultivate. So going back to the muscle test, we have to be very, very careful when you've been doing a muscle test the same way forever, or perhaps your physiology isn't doing well and you're on the roller coaster blood sugar every day, all day. I can guarantee your muscle test is not coming out correctly. So
no, I agree with you 1,000,000%. And that's where, I use that fundamentally because you consume certain things and at the level that we've mastered our own cultivating sensory perception, it's much easier for me to just dip in there. But I use an ideomotor more for entertainment purposes as opposed for divination. So I'll take someone down to like the MGM Grand and get them to take a quarter and go and place it somewhere in a 5,000 room hotel. And I'll use their body and what's already projected in their mind to walk me right back to where the coin is. And they go, it's all vibration. It's all resonance. It's all frequency. And I just use their whole body as the tuning fork. Because I always remind people, this is your tuning fork that is registering. And from my dear friend, Tom Campbell, he talks about the large consciousness system as this, what are you entering in a low or high entropy level? And so your determination of your probability of something being realized will be determined by your attention intention, bringing us right back to how important it is to be focused and committed on what it is that you're embarking on when it comes to working with you or working with me, having a value system and a realization of what it is that's going to take place. But the energetic dowsing I find really powerful stuff. So I'll pick out vortices in their house. I'll pick out the highest points of divination from the earth to the universe, and they freak out because their eyes are open and they're experiencing this field, this portal of energy, and they're like, holy crap. And then it's like, I bet you he was just hypnotizing me. And I go back tomorrow. And they just go to randomly, get in an argument with their husband or whatever, and they'll walk in over to the vortices and go, holy moly, it's there. It hasn't gone anywhere. But I was in an argument with my husband, and I'm totally in my body. I'm totally in the present, in the present moment of distortion, and the energy is still there because that's what everything is about. And so that's a shift of consciousness in of itself. And I feel like that's so critical to the person's realization. And ultimately, as you would say, I'm always the observer of this healing of others, observing it. I
Right.
do not ever tell people that I am the next coming of Messiah or Jesus Christ, the healer. And it's got nothing to do with ego. It's just what happens is you lead people to this realization, and they attune to this frequency. It's not about dismissing the insight, the mastery, whether we're ego or not ego. It's so funny because I had a yogi on yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, humility. What do you need that for? You're becoming you're humbling yourself because other people's distortion of their insecurities." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh, how an interesting perspective." And it's not because most people would perceive the knowing that you and I have as a level of arrogance and narcissism because we
Mm.
are knowing. I've been
Mm.
doing this over 30 years. I
Mm.
know I can give you a solution to the very thing that you're here for, and it will be present and representative in your reality very quickly. And I just know because I repeat it over and over and over and over again. And so when you elevate to a level of consciousness that you do not perceive that, you start to realize this is my opportunity to open the lens. It's not oh, Mr. Know-it-all, or I
Yeah.
get, oh, Mr. Magic Man, give me an aura reading. And I love that. That was because I always go, do you want me to give you an, oh yeah, go ahead, Magic Man, give me the aura reading. I'm like, oh, okay. And then 3 seconds in, I go within Taoism, we have 9 energy centers, the 3 main dantians, and then subsections of that. Within a sort of Hindu practice, you have the 7 chakras and 2 transpersonal points. We consider the earth another energy center. So it's the energy center, the 7 chakras in between it, and another energy center above us that connects us with the universe, transpersonal points. So I just read that how we read energy is you look at the 5 major elements of the body, the heart, the liver, the lungs, the kidneys, and the spleen. Within that, there's an excess or deficiency that presents itself. When I look at the field, I'll see the excess color, whether it's bleeding out or whether it's consumed. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's oscillating, or it's bleeding out and it's too excess. And the point of it is to reveal the virtue from the emotion. And so the emotional content is the stagnation. And so I just read it off very a matter of fact. And people
Right.
are like, how the hell do you know anything about me? It's not about me. I couldn't care less. I'm just reading what's in your field. And people are like, that is wrong. You should not be able to do that. And I'm like, it's just a method that you train in, a sensory perception. And I'm not invested in the outcome of you telling me that, hey, how do you know I have a sexual deficiency and I've got ED problems that have lasted me over 7 months, actually consciously probably 3 years? It's in your field.
Mm.
Freak
Mm.
out. So I go from the bottom up, and by the time I get to the sexual energy, people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't need to go any further at this point. And the answer is always, well, that's your truth as you know it. And they get all defensive because you're right there. You know
Yeah.
very well that most people embody it. If I'm engaging with them, they want to understand this information. But if I'm doing a one-off random black ops psychic reading on the street for fun, there is an adverse reaction that a lot of people get to, and they go, this is real. You can actually see that. Whoa.
Yeah, and I think this is where like you're distinguishing the differences between just the street fair things versus if you make an appointment and work with me 101 or you want to go deeper, then
Yeah.
it's different. And this is when, as practitioners like us or teachers or whatever you want to call ourselves, that or a master or whatever, I don't call myself with a lot of those names, but basically, if you're going to work with me, I have to be aware of how much they can handle at this moment. Just like, when you do a red light therapy, near infrared red light therapy, which is really great for many, many things. Like a new study just came out in February of this year. So it's wonderful, is that it can lower your blood sugar glucose spikes. And if you eat, basically sunrise and a sunset and then being exposed to the reddish light, that can really calm the spike of the blood sugar, but also can increase the mitochondrial activities, which is really wonderful for energy productions and so many things and healing, right? So anyway, where was I going with it? So the where I was going to go with it is that I have to know how much to share, because just like a red light therapy, your cells have a limited amount that the cells can absorb the red light. And cells won't let you know per se. You kind of feel it a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, that's enough red light therapy. Like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's usually enough. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like I'm working with an individual. How much of that red light I can expand and give it and share with them and teach them how to take care of themselves has its limit. And each session, the limit might change, sometimes goes up, maybe less next time. But that's where I need to be humbled enough. Let's say if I were to use that word humbled, is that I'm humbled by the fact that I can't just fire hose these people with all the knowledge that I have picked up over the last 25 years of my work, that know when to give them just a glass full, when to give them the pitcher full of water, when to give them a swimming pool size, and when to pull back, so that's something that I'm always learning. I always try to keep in mind that I'm a student of this universe as well. And there's so much that I'm still learning. So that's what makes my work never boring. It's always exciting. It's always something I get to learn and incorporate. And, my work is about human health, right? This physiology. And of course, it's an energy work, but I'm also dealing with their digestive issues, bloating and gas, and their GERD, their NERD, which is like the liver bile backing up. And I'm trying to have them get off of medications if they're willing to. I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell them to do that. But if they ask me to, I can help them step by step. I mean, it's a very nitty gritty, I always tell them that my work is like building a basement of your house. I never really get to the point of decorating. I never get to the point where you get to put your furnitures and beautiful rugs and paint the walls. My work is really about digging the grounds and putting the good foundations so that foundation can hold what you put on top of it. And, so at times, funny thing is that I used to do almost all my work was energy medicine oriented. I studied breathing techniques from this yogi in New York City for years. And I studied, my entry into yoga was pranayama. So it was all about the breathing technique. And I studied with the Zen teacher for a long time, and doing hours and hours of meditation, to going to silent retreats, to you name it. And what ended up happening to me, which I did not share at the beginning, is that I lost the ability to walk, and I was diagnosed with MS. But right before I had that autoimmune condition diagnosis, I decided that I was overworking, and I took some time off, and I went to the mountains in a place called Crestone, Colorado, where I stayed in this hermitage of about 300 square feet. Just a little place with nothing, except for you and your own noise in your mind. And one night, this was literally 2 days before I lost the abilities to walk. It was a new moon, and it was no moon in the sky, and the sky was calling on me. So I went outside after a nice bath. I went outside and looked up to the skies, and then all these stars, Milky Way, just above me, they were just twinkling, and they were just talking to me. And I was just in awe. I was just telling them how beautiful it is to be alive. Even though I was in so much pain, I had been in so much physical pain for a long time at that time. And I look up, and I hear this voice that said, "Are you ready to experience true you?" And I was like, who just spoke to me? And there's just, these 100 acres of nothingness. No one was speaking to me in per se, like a human being. So I just kind of looked around, and then the voice said that again, very clearly. "Are you ready to experience true you?" And I just again looked around 360 up and down. And I said, hell no. And then I walked right back, like ran back actually to my hermitage, shut the door, locked everything, pulled the shades down. I wrapped myself in a blanket and I was shaking for 2 hours. And then basically 2 days later, I couldn't get out of bed anymore. And that was my wake up call because I was doing nothing but energy work. And maybe you could, you may critique how I was doing it, but basically I was doing energy medicine, right? I was doing chakra clearing. I was doing breathing techniques. I was taking them through myofascial work. I have these hands that can literally heal people. And it's almost scary to the point what I can do with my hands. But so I would have people coming in every day. I did not post a single ads out there, who I am, what I do. People just word of mouth kept coming and kept coming. So I worked and worked and worked and worked. I never even took a break. I didn't even take a sip of water. Some days I didn't even go to the bathroom. It was just an insane level thing I was doing. I'm one of those people that I have to take myself to an extreme level in order for me to swing my pendulum back to the another extreme so that I can come back to the middle way at some point. So that's what I did. And so that it's not that the energy medicine failed, but I actually needed to learn the science behind the biology, physiology, nutrition, digestion, and then how that all works. And so I went totally on this side of the functional medicine, functional nutrition, and learned for the first time in my life how this thing works on that level. And so now I'm slowly coming back to the middle where East can meet the West. And this is where I can express who I am fully as half Japanese and half American, and, holding and straddling these two extremely sometimes different way of looking at things. I get to live from that. So that is my story of finding who I am and why I call myself the health intuitive. It's because I'm interested in your health, and I'm also interested in cultivating your inner knowing.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what was the end result? Did you attune yourself to
Yeah.
be healed from MS?
Yes. So doctors were just not, they were confused why I was able to heal. I mean, they would use the word like remission, but I can tell you that I have healed myself. And that being said, though, when I go outside of my field of homeostasis, you want to call it, or maybe, like that balanced place, I can feel some of those twinges of, little voices. It's like, hey, listen, you're overdoing this. You've gone too far into this section. Come back home, come back this way, or the other way, come back this way. So I considered these diagnoses, and basically after my MS, a year later I got hit by an armored truck, and it reversed the curvature of my neck completely to the opposite direction. I no longer could sleep. I could no longer really function. So all this physical illness and physical pain has helped me to not leave this body. So I see these things, the pain, the little whispers, the little twinge of something. Those are all my teachers. I bow deeply to these teachers that are in me, that's teaching me to awaken me deeper and to address the needs, the day-to-day needs of this physical body, because I honor this so much, because I know for a fact that I will never be back as me. So this moment means so much to me. So that's what I do. And yes, I have energetically and medically have healed myself of the autoimmune condition.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the stuff that gets me all fuzzy and warm inside. I love that stuff, and like I said, all jokes aside, and many of my students and OGs have heard this before, 30 years ago, my hit of the spiritual crack pipe was all it took. I was addicted, and it came in the form of witnessing a physical healing.
Mhm.
And so watching human flesh transmute before your very eyes,
Right.
gangrenous within 40 minutes. And then I sort of got into there's this resonance that you get into. It's a state. And my teacher, Latsu, who I channel and is in direct communication with on a second-by-second basis, he gives me great insight. But that was the first one. That was like, and I think what I really love about what you're speaking on and what I'm speaking on is people have lost the value of the heritage, the lineage, the ancient practices that we're speaking of that gives us that charge like you get right now. It gives us direct, attunement. It's like millions of people before me, generation after generation after generation, have experienced these very practices. And it's like when you're driving down the highway and it's a rainy day, you want to stay in line behind the vehicle in front of you so that you break the basically the surface, so there's a groove. You understand that you're not going to slip on the road. It's the same thing with these practices. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you find someone like yourself or myself that has the access to these ancient techniques that work, that will bear fruit, that will give you the results that you're looking for, you don't have to have, the local new age spiritual guy that took 3 tabs of acid and became a psychonaut, and next minute he's discovered the inner working. And there's nothing wrong with, I want to make this very clear. There's nothing wrong with that, but it needs to be repeatable. That's how I work. It's like, if he's found the new way, which is exactly the same way Latsu confessed to me, his whispers from the universe that transmitted the very Tao Te Ching that we are familiar with today came from his interconnection with the universe. So all this comes in one way, shape, or form. If you find someone that has something you resonate with, stay with it. I think this is a consensus we're both having. Allow yourself to embody it because it's coming from here. Your truth teller is that intuitive aspect that will come in the form of this visceral kinesthetic response that will validate the very knowing that you are right there, the center of the center of the center of the center. And that is the truth. That is the Wu Ji. That is the stillness between the breath in and the breath out, which would be the center point of an infinity, which we call the mother of all things, the Tao.
Right.
And that's the other thing where people are like, did you say the mother of all things? Oh, yes, I did. She'd be straight on that. Yes. And she that's right. The mother.
Yeah.
And people, for that charge you got right down, that is the essence. And people, I get so many of my students come from all over the world, and they're women because they've traveled the world through other Taoist practices, and they're literally had the door closed to them by some overbearing sort of realm of man, narcissistic, hierarchy-based, testosterone-driven, young, burnt-out, a representation. And they come to me and they're like, I can't believe you're teaching me. This is insane. Well, look, we have a very ancient scepter, Ryu Ruyi, that goes way deeper, that we actually use within rituals. And there's other variables of these particular scepters. But the essence of it is it's in the shape of a uterus. We ain't playing. We're very clear of the true center of the center of the center, the creation of all things. And our numerology is lent deeply on the power of 9. And 9 is the most powerful number within Taoist numerology. And then when we talk about that, we go, oh, what does it take? It takes 9 months to create life force. Wow, that's crazy. What are the chances of that? What a coincidence. And so we go very, very deep into that understanding. And, people just don't, there are no coincidences. I can refer to myself back in my childhood, being raised by a radical feminist, perhaps a little too twisted in one side, but she came to realize her own psyop. But I had a deeper nurturing of that intuition, that yin essence. And maybe it was a reflection. Well, it actually was a reflection of past lives, many lives leading up to this one. But my access to that magnetic fluidity is not generally the general representation of most male seekers. It's something that they have to really cultivate and acquire. It was something I just woke up with, and it's just how it is. I resonate with that. Most yang energy that's not balanced will run from the very room that I sit in, that I speak from, that any sort of platform, they cannot handle. That expression for that movie, Few Good Men with Tom Cruise, you can't handle the truth. And that balance is, and that's why probably most of the people that I work with are women, and they resonate, they understand, and they're like, wow, holy moly, because I can the yang, I can bring the yin,
right,
I can merge the two. And when I decide to go yang, all electric, it scares people. It's like, oh, he's intense, he's scary. I was like, I'm just harnessing the energy, and I'm embodying it and sharing it with you.
Right.
Embody it, embrace it, absorb it, realize it. It's got nothing to do with you being less or excess of anything. This is about you emerging as you are me, I am you. What is there to be? What fear, or what is there a reason to be afraid of anything? Realizing that present moment is the only truth that we speak of.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing that. It was beautiful to listen to. And I look forward to learning from you as well, to explore what you have to share and teach for this world, and for me too. And, I think you can tell when you meet a person that is, lack of better words, balanced, or able to tap into both yin and yang. You can feel the difference, and people are always shocked when they meet me how small I am, because my presence is so large.
Yeah. There's a lot.
They meet me and they're like, they realize that I'm less than 100 pounds and I'm not even 5'2", right? So because it's nothing to do with the size of the being, it's the expansiveness that I get to tap into. But I don't just expand outward, but I expand inward deeply. And there's universe to explore in here. There are deserts and the rivers and the oceans and the mountains to explore for me inside also. So that's what gets me so excited about being alive every day. This doesn't mean that I don't have a day-to-day challenges, or Mercury retrograde goes in and my computer shuts down. Yeah, things like that will happen and does happen. But I'm able to come back home and just laugh at the bizarreness of this thing called life, number one, and to step into straddling. I love straddling between these different realms. So it's not just physical, but it's not just mind. It's not just soul, but it's not just spirit. It's not yin only. It's not just yang only. And, what I channel, and I've never really talked about this, but what I channel is the moon. Moon came to me in 2019, and this is when I was starting to experience my perimenopause. But I didn't even know that I was experiencing that, because I was taking care of myself. I eat well, I take great supplements, I move, doing breathing, I get my morning sun, I'm doing all these things. But there's something, it wasn't a physical, but it was something emotional. It was an emotional charge that I was being directed to look up to the sky and say, well, hello, moon. I haven't been with you in so long. Because when you grow up in Asia, we honor the moon calendar. But when I moved to the US, there's no mentioning of the moon cycles. It's all about the solar. It's all about the sun. It's all about the yang. It's all about the masculine. And so as soon as I started to straddle this, like a kind of a different realm of a perimenopause is a very strange time. Things are up and down, hormones up and down. You can't really tell what's up from down at that time. So that's when the moon said, you are going to learn about me. And what you're going to learn is the cyclicality. It's that what you said, about Lao Tzu. It's that movements, the circular movements, the rhythm. We have rhythms in this world, and you have rhythms within you. And so what I did, and what I have been doing since, I've been teaching courses and things like that around how to harness the wisdom of the lunar cycles and the moon power. But I'm also diving deeply into the science of it. And it's hard. It's really, really hard, because there's a cultural bias behind moon versus sun. Everyone's studying about the circadian rhythm, but almost no one wants to talk about the circulunar rhythm. That's because the scientists have been ridiculed from studying moon. They're coming out and saying this right now. But luckily for me, moon told me at the right timing, because right around maybe last 3 to 4 years or so, more studies are coming out of China, Korea, Japan, India, Middle East, Russia, and hopefully maybe in the United States or Canada, or European the Western European countries may start to talk about this more. But there are studies starting to come out how lunar cycles and the gravitational force, as well as the lunar movements and the cycles, are impacting our organs. And I just read an article that just came out that there are certain liver enzymes that the doctors thought that they were only controlled by the circadian rhythm, the 12-hour cycles. No, this particular enzyme is actually moving with the circadial. So meaning the moon cycles. And no matter what they've done, this enzyme will not change its patterns, and it'll only work with the lunar cycles. So there are things like that. Melatonin goes down as we head towards the full moon. This is something that you cannot fight against. So what I've been saying in a lot of my interviews these days is that I get interviewed by the health side quite a bit too, right? They all just want to know biohacking. They say to me, so what can we do to biohack to get more melatonin? And I say to them, I can give you some tools, but what we need to do is the biohug. We need biohugging, not hacking, and to embrace the fact that we live as a part of this big cosmic energy, cosmic flow, cosmic cycles. That's what we need to be in tuned with. And a lot of people say, well, but these days, moonlight doesn't matter. We have all these lights in the. Well, that should be a warning sign to all of us that we are losing our way forward. We're losing our way into who we came into this world as and to become. We have a soul contract that we must fulfill. But if you are losing touch with the cosmic rhythm, that should be a warning sign. And it's not about, oh, we can't scientifically prove it. No, we have lost our way. And so that's who I channel now. The moon is my teacher. I speak to her every day. Anytime I need any kind of a clarification, she's straightforward. She has no, she doesn't add any extra to it. She's like, this is it, Masami. Deal with it. Go and learn. So she's been a glorious teacher for me. I have actually lived my life with a lot of masculine energy. One, because I had to fight the world from bullying me all day, right? For being different. So I became a very much of a feisty, I will fight you. I don't even care how big you are. You will get defeated by the end of it by me physically. That's how I lived my entire life up to my perimenopause. Very masculine energy. That's why almost all my clients were CEOs, government officials, and all athletes that were all men. That's all I worked with all men, and I loved working with men. And then now I went 180. I work almost all exclusively with women, and women of wisdom, women who have lived half of their lives already, and they have their second life that they're here to teach us and to explore who they are from this point forward. That's who I work with now. So it's been an interesting pull, and I'm assuming at some point the pendulum is going to come back right to the middle place again. So I'm going to remain curious and just stay on my course.
Wow. I mean, you're speaking on so many things, Taoist. Within the Dantians, we have three: upper, middle, lower. Upper is the sun, middle is the earth, and the lower is the moon. And you merge the two. There's three keepers that are keepers of the cosmos that are my teacher's direct source. Supreme purity is the upper Dantian, the keeper of light. Jade purity is the middle Dantian, the keeper of information. And highest purity is the lower Dantian, and he's the keeper of the magic. So that's the merging of the two. Oh yeah, and so we have this one practices of development in the middle Dantian where it's there's 81 chambers in each Dantian. Now each Dantian has this evoking alchemical response, and this one specifically is observing the death of a star, the raising of the red phoenix, and the opening of black hole energy. And people are like, whoa, I don't know what that means, but I can feel it. And they're like, whoa, but isn't a black hole some sort of like ominous void that sucks the life out of everything? No, 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 no. You're missing the point. There's a thing that within quantum physics, as they speak on, is called the 0 point, right? And so that 0 point would be referred to more within a wave of energy, a scalar wave. Now, when you move past electromagnetic, which is bound to the time and space that we speak of within a 3D reality, as you hit the lip, the event horizon of a black hole, all bets are off. The resonance is everything, and it changes. And all of a sudden, you have this black hole energy that is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And so I've been teaching this for many, this is a Taoist thing, thousands of years, but I have students that have epiphanies that they accept it, they use it to transmute, manifest, heal, create magic, all that kind of good stuff. But one of them has a PhD doing research on certain things. He gets projects, and he was researching the nucleus of a cell. He's like, Shifu, you wouldn't believe what I found inside the nucleus of a cell. I said, please tell me. Black hole energy.
Yeah.
And so for all those OGs, they get it. That charge you're getting, it's the super glue to the foundation of the premise behind the theory that we know as truth as the quantum entanglement.
Yes.
And
you got it. You got it. And then the darkness is what I'm interested in. And when I say that, a lot of people are kind of pulled back. It's like, but I'm interested in the ascension and the light. And I'm like, more you go into the darkness, you have the capacity to navigate and explore and take in the light. But just like the cells have a limited amount that it can hold on to the light, So I'm all about journeying into the darkness, and the darkness is not a tomb, but it's a womb, right? Darkness is not a tomb. It's not a death sentence. It's a place of birth. It's a place of creation. It's the nexus of potential. That's in a center of possibilities. That's what the darkness is. And that's what I'm interested in. That's why I'm interested in the moon cycles, because the moon cycles takes us through all spectrum of light and gray, right? I mean, the darkness is the light that you cannot see. So it's a spectrum of light per se.
Black is white, white is black. It's all the same.
Exactly.
It really is. And that's the misdirection and the fallacy that people get lured by, is that they have yet to awaken to this realization. That's okay. That's why they come to you or me, and they come to that realization. But when we talk about astral projection, and I teach people out of body, near death, all that kind of good stuff, once you obtain the Nigong practices, the internal power, the inner power, activating the Dantian, which is the energy field, what happens is you are able to operate in all dimensions at once, leaving you to what we consider as, a new definition of multitasking. And so this is where you get into high states of consciousness, and that is not all related to one color. It's all colors. Now, within Taoism, we have 81 colors that we we resonate with. Hang on, there's only 7. That's the rainbow. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, my goodness. We've just started. And you and I understand this in great
Right.
detail. But, the moon is an incredible healing tool. And that's why it's the lower Dantian cultivating Dantian. And you merge the two. So electric and magnetic is merged as one. So people can ultimately look at yin as just one facet. No, it's everything. And so when you master the internal, so when you're going out, you're really going in, which is what we're referencing.
Right.
When you go inside, the yin is all things. And so hang on, but it's the yin. Oh, no. The deeper you go, the deeper you come to this resonance and realization that it is all things. And that is healing.
Well, and I think, what I'm so involved in now without even knowing that I was, is that I am creating a rebirth towards feminine spirituality. The spirituality has been taught in such a lens through the masculine, and in the masculine spirituality, I think we've had enough of. Our cells can't take enough of that. I mean, we can't take it in anymore. That's why the darkness, the yin, it's the lunar, it's the reflective lights, it's the time of stillness and silence. That feminine quality, spirituality, people are hungry for. And I think people are ready to digest that now. We're coming to that point in our human history, feels like finally, once again, because we had that at one point. And so that's where I get quite excited about. And I get excited about getting lost in not knowing space. I love hanging out in the liminal space. And people always like, no, what's going to happen to me? Okay, if I take these supplements and if I do changes, and how much longer am I going to do this? It's like, I can't do this. When am I going to heal? It's like, and you know what? If you can't handle the I don't know, then you probably need to go look for somebody else that can guarantee you stuff. Because I don't guarantee when you're going to be better. It's just, but you have to trust that you will, because you can get better. You can heal. You can turn this thing around. And sometimes your illnesses, what you've been doing for the last, God knows, I work with women in their 70s and 80s, and sometimes 7 to 8 decades of bad patterns and habits can take a little bit of time to turn things around. We could experience a spontaneous moment of spontaneous moment of healing situations. But that's not where I stop, because I want that to become the lasting end result. And that means you have to do the day to day. You have to still go and chop wood and carry water, so that's where I come in. So, a lot of my work, it's like I said, it's not very fancy. It's not very, glitzy and Hollywood-like. It's really in the trenches, because sometimes I have to turn these cargo ships around, and it takes many points. These giant cargo ships from China to the West Coast. It takes 26 points to turn the cargo ship around. We're not dealing with the 3-year-olds. I love working with the young kids, because they just start feeling better 3 hours later. They start working on this stuff, right? Or 3 seconds later. But sometimes there is such thing as chronological age. So, maybe you might say we can transcend that. But in my practice, I work with people that have experienced that transcending side, but then they got bogged down again with the day-to-day, because they didn't change the day-to-day. They only hung on to that magical experience they had. And I have to kind of wake them up and say, wake up. You still have to eat well. You still have to go to bed at a reasonable time. You still have to drink pure water, those basic things, so that's why I do love working with spiritually minded people who have experienced many beautiful miraculous things in their lives, but they're physically struggling. That I like to make them come together so they can bridge this experience with their physical body, because your physical body can experience that. And it will not be just moment in time, but it's something they get to live day after day. And you can begin to count on that sense of inner delightfulness, inner deliciousness every day. I feel delicious inside me. I feel delightful inside me. I feel so awake and ready to step in practically every day. Practically every day. I might have moments. I do. I have moments that I want to stay in my bed just a bit longer. But that's okay. That's okay. That's when I'm a human being, So I know I kind of went into all kinds of places, but that's okay. That's what we're doing today.
Exactly. No, I agree with all of it. I mean, it's kind of like the fundamental journey of a Taoist is this. It's two sides of a mountain. One's yin, one's yang. As you go through your journey, you merge the two as one, being at one with all things, the Wu Ji, the mother of all things, the Tao. And so with that comes, contemplation and, things can be realized instantaneously, right back to what some people consider the conception of the birth of all things, the Big Bang theory. If you believe in that as a starting point, that's how fast things materialize. That's how fast things can transmute. So I would then lean on your agreeing with, people go through the journey of having realized these incredible miracles and then they forget. And you're here to remind them, to bring them back to the
That's
true
right. Wake
nature.
up. Right.
Right.
Yeah,
To
wake up.
remind them that the truth is, this is the truth, not the distortion, as my friend would say, the dukkha, the distorted emotional content that separates you. And Latsu always says this, is like, oh, humans are so funny. And I'm like, oh, really? It's like, oh, just imagine you're a grain of sand asking the beach, what are we doing today? And when you fall back into the beach, all things are realized. And it's like, whoa, when he said that to me the first time, I was like, the charge you just got right now, I was like, wow, this is what we talk about, a higher intelligence that we're not aware of, direct source information. As you obtain it from the moon, I obtain it from Latsu, the Tao. It's instant. And it's powerful, it's palpable, and you recognize it through this visceral kinesthetic charge. This is the physicality that is necessary. Even when you go out of body, that's going inside the astral projection component of it, however you want to perceive it, you're still registering this information. As Tom and I agreed, there is a data point where this information is being registered. Oh, I don't feel my body anymore. Well, you're feeling something that's being registered that then you can describe when you come back to what you consider planet Earth, and it's all coming from this.
Yeah.
And so that's the misdirection and sort of the deception that people have, because they get distorted. They get on the journey of the psychonaut journey, and they get a glimpse. They get what I call the chasing of the dragon, and they can't replicate it. No. I teach people that you can go and have a DMT experience that lasts you 20 minutes, or eat some mushrooms or some ayahuasca, whatever it is. And it's transitory, it's temporary. I can teach you how to create a physiological chemical response where your DMT experience goes for 3 days. Or internally, you evoke a brainwave, right? And I've measured this a lot, EEGs. So, when we're healing, when I put people in healing or I'm channeling Latsu, I get a high gamma brainwave anywhere between 100 to 400 hertz. So we're talking like a whole different ball game. And so you get into that space. What does that mean to the person watching this? When you envelop the brain at 100% at a gamma brainwave of 40 hertz and above, you start to play with all brainwaves at once. That means that you can drop into alpha, delta, theta, epsilon with your eyes open. And so, what does that mean? That means you are conscious. This is the ultimate conscious 100. That means that you can then shift change instantaneously. And so when I do mediumship or I'm doing other forms of channeling, the brain will go quiet. When I channel Latsu or on physical healing, I'm witnessing one, I go high gamma, 100, 200, higher. I'm like schwitzing. You could put a marshmallow on a stick and basically scorch it. And most people do when they're sitting around this transmission, because it comes right through my physical body and it emanates through the transmission. And so I love the way your relationship with the moon, because Latsu, from week to week, I'll do a transmission from Latsu and record it and put it on my channel. And it's very simplistic, because he doesn't get into the semantics of whether someone's afraid of what's going to happen in the world. Is there going to be death and destruction? No, he'll talk about the oscillation of the sun, the moon, and the earth, and what they're transmitting at this moment, and then what element to look out for a specific peak of that week. So he'll just go, this day is Thursday the 29th, and you feel it, and the earth is doing this with the moon and the sun, and the element that you should acquire will be metal, and with that it'll evoke all these other mental emotional states that come within you. And people are like, it freaks me out, I watched it and then it actually happened, it's tripping me out, or I saw a past one and exactly on that day these things transpired, because it's just a tuning. And so when I embody him and I do it from an expression of that, people are like, man, woo, this is over what we call digital realization of the quantum mechanics that is making this possible that we're operating in right now. The binary code. That's it. That's the secret source of all things, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no thoughts, really. I mean, it's I'm tasting it. I think when I listen to conversations like this, or what you're experiencing and what you're sharing with me, it is not what my thoughts that count, really. It's just it lands, and to me it's like, where did it land? Where in my visceral embodied self did that message land?
Everywhere.
And that's yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I listen, and I think that's one of the positive things about being born and raised in an Asian culture, is that we de-emphasize language. Like, language is very important, of course, but it's so overly emphasized in the countries like the US, or, I would say even like the UK. Western cultures will look at you. When I came to this country, I'll back up a little bit, but when I came to this country, I was 16. I moved by myself and I lived with 2 different foster homes. And so I didn't move here with my family. I didn't speak a word of English. I only knew a phrase, which was, I asked my father how to say, my name is Masami, I don't speak English. That's the only phrase that I practiced on the airplane. So I could say that very well. So when you come to this country and when you don't speak English language, the treatment towards you is pretty awful. I mean, there's a politically correctness these days, but when I moved here, it was the late 80s. So it was a huge kind of anti-Japanese movement, because the Japanese imported cars were starting to come in. I moved to the most northern part of Minnesota, where they have iron ore mining companies. And one of the major mining companies got just bought up by a Japanese company. And so they were so anti-Japanese, right? So, when you don't speak the language, there's so much hatred and so much bigotry and racism going around. I mean, you are picking up this like vibrational yuck and muck basically every single day, every moment of your life. And you just like, oh my God, I went from one racist world to another racist country, So in that, what it did for me was that I got to spend a lot of time in my teenage years in silence, because I didn't understand them. They didn't understand me. I couldn't speak. I couldn't express who I was. And they didn't have the patience to listen to me, struggle through what I was trying to say to them, right? This is a fast moving country, everyone, nobody can deny it. The United States is a fast moving, everything has to be produced, everything has to be going up and up and up kind of a society. So we don't wait around for people who cannot speak English to come around, to get back on, on the level that they're at. So, but with that, what that taught me is that what's happening with my life right now is, and my husband says this all the time, but I experience so much of what ancient teachers have taught and written in all these books, spiritual books, and all these amazing teachings that the people have been studying. I didn't read any of that, to be honest with you. My husband read all that, so you two can have a really wonderful conversations around those books. But I didn't, because what I know to be true today is a visceral, embodied knowing. And so, whenever I speak, they're like, oh, that reminds me of the passage of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no idea what you're talking about. But that is what I sense, and that's what I experience, and that's what I speak of. So I think it helped me a lot to navigate this energetic fields, the quantum fields, without getting bogged down by what would the science say, what would the ancient teachings say. I don't get caught up in any of that. And that's I'm a free agent. And I think this is one of the reasons why the moon chose me, because I do believe that I was chosen to speak with the moon. And that's something that I carefully utter. Okay. I have never said this before, but I do believe that why me? Why now? Why would you want to speak to me, moon? You have billions of people out there, you know, at least 4 billion people out there that you can speak to. And then the moon is doing that to others as well. But in the particular way that she speaks to me, in the particular way that she guides me, is because I don't come from a very deep scientific knowing or spiritual knowing. I don't come from any of that stuff. It is truly from my very formative years of my life was spent not understanding anything that was going on, and everybody else looking at me like I'm basically a stupid person because I couldn't speak the language. I mean, just granted, let's put this in the historical context. This is the late 80s. Okay. So this is not the time we are helping immigrants. Okay. This is not the time that we have a little more space to allow these people to, get acquainted to the new culture. We didn't give anybody any time to adjust. So, they moved on if you did not speak that language. And, it was a very tough time. I went from the top of the class in Japan and going to the top high school to taking ESL as an English, ESL as a second language, ESL class, right? English is a second language class, and learning about the names of the furnitures and names of the utensils at age 16. I mean, this is a flip upside down that happened in my life, but I'm forever grateful that the life knocked me completely down to the kindergarten level again, or even younger, and silenced me for so long that in that time, as a conscious teenage being, I was able to tap into so much more than the 26 letters of alphabet put together. And I'm forever grateful for that. So, I can't recite all kinds of wonderful things. I have read all kinds of things, but it's ultimately that's not where I rely deeply to be the energetic being that I am.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the feeling.
Mhm. Mm.
It's more than a feeling. One of my favorite songs, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it just brings everything together. I mean, for
Mhm.
me, my affinity with Chinese culture goes many lifetimes back, and my reacquaintance, my reunited, and it feels so good. Me getting back to my roots within Mandarin and being really deep with the language is just what I already know, and it just I could literally not have to understand anything and just witness or speak any character, at all. And I literally, the energy just runs through me at a crazy rate. So it's like, again, I would say that, yes, you were definitely sort of merged into a melting pot at a hyper speed. The America we know today is far more accommodating for people that are coming in with the language barrier, as opposed to China and Japan. I mean, maybe Japan I'm not familiar with. China I'm very familiar with. They don't care. It's like, you don't speak their language. We ain't converting to help you out here if you ain't speaking the language, my friend.
Right.
So it's kind of like, it really is the same way around the world. I don't know what Japan is like. Is Japan a little bit more understanding of the Western culture and helping people adapt to communication, or is it similar to the Chinese?
Well, Japanese people have been known to be the kindest people on this earth, right? So they're super accommodating. They will help you navigate and make sure that you get a really good tour of Japan. But that is just a superficial level. It's the creme of that, top part of, you haven't gotten to the nitty gritty, the darkness part of it. And, that's when it's hard. You have to be able to speak that language quite well. They will never really completely integrate you into their culture. Even for me, somebody that was born, raised, still holds the Japanese passport, still the citizen of Japan, will not integrate me completely into their realm. They know that I'm separate. But that's actually has tormented me, and also that has rewarded me to be who I am, because I don't get too caught up in where I belong or where do I need to fit in. It's just, I am an entity that belongs to this cosmos. And basically, the moon said to me just a few months ago, I was actually taking a nice bath with the magnesium salt, and I had all the lights turned off so that I could just be in the darkness. And my father and I were having conversations in the tub, and then, well, not together because he's not here anymore. For those of you listening, it's like, what? Okay. Anyway, and then that's when I was saying to him that, I really don't belong anywhere. And I've never belonged anywhere. I was always an outsider, no matter where I went. I am the outlier. I don't fit in that bell curve neatly. You don't either. That's why we connect, right? And in that moment, he goes, well, this is why you connected with the moon. And the moon chimed in at that same time too. And she said, yeah, you belong to me. We belong to one another. So you're never lost. And she's like, anytime you feel lost, just find me. I'm there. And I had tears coming down, because that little self, little human girl, little Masami that never belonged, was yearning to find a community, right? That they will embrace you completely. But, I never had that experience on the earthly level, but on the cosmic level, I sure belong. I belong so firmly between the earth and the heavens that I am never lost. So that's something that truly, me reconnecting with the moon again, which I was connected to as a child, but I lost it when I came here to the US, has come back around full circle, but not on the same surface of the circle, but it's more of the spiral that I'm experiencing. I'm more than ever before, I'm confident in who I am. That's why I'm able to put myself out there. That's why I'm able to talk about the moon without apologies. I don't need to shy away from it. If this message isn't for you, there are billions of other channels you can tune into. So that's my, maybe a balance between a masculine and feminine energy that's coming out. I'm firm, I'm strong, but I don't need to go out and try punching kids anymore. I don't need to fight for my rights anymore. I just stand firmly in my own 2 feet. with inner knowing space that it's never going to leave me, has never left me, will forever be here and forever been here. And I get to tap into that every time I speak of the moon connection that I have with her. Yeah.
So beautiful. It really is, because outside of my wife and my 6 children, the only family I have is the 3 pure ones, the Tao, Letsu, and I can tap into it at will. And it's strange that you speak on your childhood, because I had a very similar situation that sort of transmuted me into having to identify with the physicality due to a range of what was perceived as this weird kid who was super smart, that absorbed information, and I was the top of all my classes. And the response was, this guy speaks all these weird words I don't even know. I need to beat him. And so I would, I would contend with, physical beatings, mob beatings, 6, 7, 8, 10 kids stomping on me, urinating on me. That was a fun one. I remember that quite distinctly, and being drawn into the girls' locker room and having 10 guys stomping on me and pissing on me at the same time. Anyway, that's just fond memories that I don't even bother wasting my time with, but it is a story. And so now we embody the truth. And so from that, I had an intuitive understanding that there's something greater. Right. And I never lost sight of that. And I had now consciously 30 years later, knowing that Latsu had never left me. Latsu was always there. I was always that. I just love the way you say it, cosmically connected. That's exactly right. That's it. And this is why you and I have all of a sudden become besties.
Yes.
Instantaneously, because there's an understanding, a deep understanding. And we tune to the same frequency, the same resonance. And we share that with all the people around us. And that's why people are drawn to us. They go way beyond all this other stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And in that, it's a never ending well. So, more of us need to come together and drink from that well, drink from that spring, and it's available for all of us. It's just, I think one thing I've learned is that when you swing too far this way, come back this way. If you swing this far too far to this way, come back in again, and just don't get stagnant in your learning. So even in your seeking journey that you might be on, and you're a seeker, that's why you found us on this, YouTube video and the interview. But in your seeking journey, take a look at what you get fixated on, what you get too interested in. It's the same with the taste buds. We have millions of ways to taste things, but we tend to just go for something sweet and something fatty and something creamy and salty. That's about it. Most Americans eat 17 foods in their lifetime. That's it. 17 different foods. That's it. When we have literally millions to choose from. So when you get fixated on one thing, or when you get stuck in just doing one kind of a healing, or one kind of a seeking work, or one kind of a project, or one kind of a workshop, pull yourself back at the cosmic level. Step back, ride on the backs of that dragon, the year of the dragon. Ride that dragon, get up high as you can get, and look down and get a wide view of things. Then ask the dragon to take you deep into 30,000 foot into the cellular level, where you can find a black hole there too, in the nucleus of the cell. So ride it and then enjoy it. But when you're riding this, don't take yourself on the blood sugar roller coaster, because then that's when your body is really, really struggling. So when your body is generally in a nice wave, like flowing, undulating in a nice way, that's when you get on the backs of the dragon and explore the world from the high to low to everything in between, and explore, and you don't lose yourself in it. That's why the physiology, the body, the metabolic rates, your sleep, your diet, your making sure you're going to the bathroom, making sure your lymphatic system is moving, making sure that your diet is supporting who you are today also matters as much as how you so wish to want to ride on the backs of the dragon. That matters, but also taking care of your body matters as much. So it's not which is more important. Like you said early on, you get to multitask. You get to literally multitask in taking care of every realm and more that you can't even fathom. All the layers you get to show up at the same time. You can do that. But I think too many people that I work with, my clientele, come to me because they're physically run down and they come with at least 5 different diagnoses and taking 15 pharmaceutical pills, right? That's why they come to me. That's why my work comes in from that physiological lens, but we're headed to the same place. Our language is the same. You and I are speaking of the same thing. We are speaking of the way. We are speaking of the Tao. That's what we're talking about. And, the image that I have is years ago, this is 20 plus years ago, I was starting to get into the yoga world. And my teacher said to me, she said, Masami, there are 8 limbs of yoga, right? Means there are 8 pathways. There are entry points, many ways to get to the yoking of who you are, the Tao, right? The center of who you are. So she said, it doesn't matter how you enter. And I entered in through the breath technique. And then, of course, as a yoga teacher, you learn the asanas, you do other things. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how you entered in, but don't get locked into the entry point and use it as entrance and exit all day long. Step out, look at what are the 7 other ways to enter the center?
Yeah. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. My goodness, we covered some incredible. Once again, I'm the master void of time and space. Well, here we go. Wow, I can't. I don't really have words. I'm just very grateful that
Yeah,
I
me
have
too.
you as a new friend, and the universe has brought us together, as there are no coincidences. And this is just amazing. Your message, all the incredible things you do for all the people that come to you, and just your commitment and what you contribute to the conscious collective is so powerful. And
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to exploring it from now on, as you have a new bestie.
Yes, I'm so excited. You started out with this is the Christmas again, and I feel like it's a Christmas for me too. And I just unpacked this beautiful gift and you popped up. So
How it works. It's amazing. It really is amazing. In closing, I want to ask you, what is your definition of consciousness?
mm, wow. Even though we talked for over 2 hours, I'm speechless with that. Like I have no words with that. Like I can't answer that. Isn't it weird? I just went kind of blank right now.
That's good enough.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel right now. What I can tell you is that that question, what that question did for me, because sometimes I don't like to answer questions of such beautiful question like that, because I just want to sit with the question. And as I sit with the question, I feel a lot more grounded. I feel like my roots have expanded and I'm drinking the nourishment from the Mother Gaia deeply right now as I expand my connection with the moon. So that's what I'm experiencing because of your question. So that's how I'm going to answer it.
That is beautiful. I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast, and it'll be available on YouTube and then available on all 20 platforms. But I want to just give you a moment to see what's going on with you today, what you're offering the audience, in what your exploration is. When you go to find Masami, I want you to check out all of her offerings. And what is it that you offer today for the audience?
Well, was it the dragon call? I believe so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that slipped my mind, but yes, it's the Lunar New Year. It's the year of the dragon. And you might be thinking, well, the Lunar New Year was in February. Well, not so quick, because it's the entire year, all the way to next January, end of next January. So please check it out, especially like midway through the year of the dragon. It's a great time to listen to that recording. And this is when I will introduce you to, I bet you've never heard of this, but the dragon is made up of all kinds of imaginations from all these sages from literally thousands of years ago. They came together and they imagined the most powerful creature that they could think of. And they put different pieces of what they know. So like the eyes represent actually like demons' eyes that can see things, like genie's eyes, right? The word demon actually comes from the genie is from the word demon also, right? And like the claws come from the tiger's claws, and then the scales that they have, the dragon has on the body, is from the fish, so it can swim through water. And I mean, so there's so many things that the dragon holds. And what this year is gifting all of us with is to tap into that different multiple layers of who you are. You're not what you see, and you're so much more than that. And you get to tap into all these elements, all these powerful energetic fields of what dragon is. So that's what this call is about, and so much more. So check it out. You'll love it.
I'll make sure that they check that out. I'm really excited to explore it. And with that, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today. I want to thank the universe for sharing and giving us this very moment. And I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.